Newsom was beaming, which was the absolute worst thing he could do, though he remained completely oblivious. He sat in the Oval Office, positioned before 30 members of the press alongside the President of the United States, and he was grinning. It was a guarded grin, the type worn by a person who believes projecting calm will make the situation calm. The expression failed to illuminate his eyes. Trump observed the look and remarked, "Look at him. He's smiling. He shouldn't be smiling. Just wait until you hear the data." 30 minutes prior, Newsom had passed through the West Wing entryways and greeted 3 staffers by name. Trump had issued a Truth Social post at 6:47 a.m., stating, "Governor Gavin Newsom of California has agreed to come to the Oval Office today for a discussion about the future of California. Should be very interesting. Perhaps he can explain where the money went." The post had reached 14 million views by the time Newsom's motorcade arrived at the White House. Newsom's team had deliberated over whether to accept the invitation for 2 days. Half the advisors considered it a trap, while the other half thought declining appeared weak, a governor afraid to face a president. Newsom, who had previously debated on Fox News and felt he could navigate hostile territory, aligned with the latter group. He would go, appear presidential, allow Trump to bluster and look like the adult in the room. He arrived in a dark suit costing more than a month's rent in Fresno. His hair was flawless, his handshake calibrated, firm, 2 seconds, direct eye contact, the subtle smile communicating confidence devoid of aggression. He gripped Trump's hand in front of the cameras, and Trump did what Trump does, maintained the grip a half-second too long, yanked Newsom slightly inward, and tilted his body so the angle favored the desk. It was a power move, subtle, practiced, the type only people who have spent decades in rooms with cameras know how to execute. Trump sat behind the resolute desk. Newsom sat in a chair on the other side. It was the visitor's chair, the lower chair, the seat where foreign leaders, cabinet secretaries, and supplicants sit. The room's geometry was not accidental. Nothing in the Oval Office is accidental. 30 reporters packed the space. No moderator, no format, no rules, no time limit. This was Trump's house, Trump's stage, and Trump's show. Trump placed both hands flat on the desk and looked at the cameras. "Thank you all for being here. This is a very important meeting. Governor Newsom has come all the way from California to talk about the future of his great state, beautiful state. Used to be anyway." He glanced at Newsom. "We're going to have a very honest conversation. Very honest. I have some numbers. He's not going to like the numbers, but the numbers are the numbers." He turned to Newsom and the grin widened. "Gavin, how's California doing? Tell everybody." Newsom leaned forward. "Well, Mr. President, I appreciate the invitation, and I'm happy to share that California remains the 5th largest economy in the world." "He's doing it." Trump turned to the reporters. "I told my people this morning, I said he's going to say 5th largest economy in the first 30 seconds. I bet a Diet Coke on it. Somebody owes me a Diet Coke." He looked at Newsom. "Gavin, you can't keep saying that. You've said it 1,000 times. Nobody's impressed anymore. You know what else is big? Russia's economy is big. Doesn't mean you'd want to live there." The press pool laughed. Newsom's smile held, but the muscles around his eyes tightened. Trump did not wait for Newsom to regroup. He reached for a folder on the desk, thin red with a gold presidential seal on the cover that someone in the communications office had added for a visual effect. "Let me tell the room a story. November 2020. Gavin here, beautiful Gavin, great hair, tells 40 million people in California to stay home, don't go out, don't see your family, don't go to Thanksgiving. If your mother's dying in the hospital, you can't visit. If your father's funeral is this weekend, you can't go. Restaurants closed, barbershops closed, churches closed, schools closed. Your kids are sitting at home staring at a laptop trying to learn math from a screen. Millions of people, millions following the rules." He opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. He held it up for the cameras. Newsom at the French Laundry, no mask, 12 people indoors, sliding glass doors closed because the party was too loud. November 6th, 2020, same month, he's telling everybody to stay home. Whereas Gavin, he's at French Laundry, you know French Laundry, $350 a plate, not per person, per plate, and that's before the wine, and Gavin knows about wine. He's got a winery. Getty bought it for him, but we'll get to that. He held the photo closer to the nearest camera. Look at this. No mask, 12 people indoors. Even though his office said it was outdoors, they lied about it being outdoors. There are pictures. The doors are closed. He's sitting shoulder to shoulder with lobbyists from the California Medical Association. The people who are supposed to be telling him how to handle COVID are breaking COVID rules at his dinner party. Trump set the photo on the desk facing outward so it remained visible for the rest of the meeting. And his kids, and this is the part that really gets me, his kids were in private school, in person, teachers in the room, other kids in the room, the whole deal. While your kids, the kids of California, were on Zoom, falling behind, getting depressed, pediatricians saying they'd never seen anxiety like this in children. And Gavin's kids, they're fine. They're in private school, $12,000 a year. Very nice. Newsom attempted, Mr. President, I've acknowledged publicly that the French Laundry dinner was a mistake, and A mistake? Trump threw his hands up. He calls it a mistake. You know what Rosa Martinez calls it, the end. Rosa had a restaurant in Fresno, Mexican food, great food, probably 22 years. She followed your rules, Gavin. She closed. She lost everything. 22 years of work gone because she followed the rules that you broke. She calls it the end. You call it a mistake. Rosa couldn't afford a $350 plate. She couldn't even afford to keep the lights on. He leaned toward Newsom. And then, this is unbelievable, but it happened. Then you went to a closed hair salon for a blowout during a pandemic. Salons are closed, your order, and you walk in and get your hair done. And when you get caught on camera, because there's always a camera, Gavin, you should know that by now, when you get caught, you say you were set up, and you say the salon owner owes you an apology. Trump turned to the reporters. The salon owner, nice lady, Erica, she got death threats, had to close, had to leave San Francisco, lost her business, lost her home, and Gavin got a blowout and a fresh start. That's California for you, Gavin. How's California doing? Tell everybody. Newsom opened his mouth. Trump was already on the next topic. Let me tell you about Gavin's background because it's a great story, really great, a fairy tale almost. His daddy, William Newsom, was a lawyer for Getty Oil, best friends with Gordon Getty, billionaire, one of the richest families in the history of the world. Getty looked at little Gavin and said, I'm going to invest in that boy. He put money into 10 out of 11 of Gavin's businesses, 10 out of 11. He told the San Francisco Chronicle he treated Gavin like a son, So this guy didn't build anything, he didn't start anything. A billionaire wrote checks and Gavin cashed them. And he calls himself a man of the people. Trump pointed to himself. I took a loan from my father, everybody knows. I've talked about it a million times. And I built a real estate empire. Buildings with my name on them, you can see them from the highway. Hotels, golf courses, tens of thousands of employees. I built things, Gavin. He took a billionaire's checkbook and opened a winery in Napa Valley. Very nice. Great wine, probably. But he didn't build it. Getty built it. Gavin just stood in front of it and smiled. That's actually his main skill, standing in front of things and smiling. He looked at Newsom. And then how did he get into politics? Willie Brown? You know Willie Brown, right? Most powerful man in San Francisco, political kingmaker, the godfather of California politics. Willie appointed Gavin to his first job in government, the Parking and Traffic Commission. Nobody voted, no election. Willie said, sit here, kid. And Gavin sat. Then Willie appointed him to the Board of Supervisors. Then he ran for mayor. And then, and this is the part that really makes the story, he had an affair with his campaign manager's wife. His campaign manager's wife, the guy running his campaign, go knock on doors. Gavin, go shake hands. I'll handle the strategy. And while the campaign manager is out knocking on doors, Gavin is at home with his wife. In any other city in America, any other city, that's the end, career over, go home. But in San Francisco, they don't even care. They promoted him. He went from mayor to lieutenant governor to governor. Trump leaned back and looked at the ceiling as if marveling at the unfairness of the universe. Gavin, the hair gel, I have to ask, was that before or after the affair? Because it's great hair, the best hair in politics, maybe second best. He touched his own hair. But here's the thing about hair, Gavin. It doesn't run a state. Numbers run a state, and your numbers are a disaster. Newsom said, Mr. President, personal attacks aren't productive. I came here to discuss policy. Policy? Great. I love policy. Let's talk policy. Trump pulled a sheet from the folder. I have numbers, real numbers, census numbers, not fake news numbers, not my numbers, your numbers, the numbers that your state reports to the federal government. He held up the sheet. 4 million people have left California since the year 2000. 4 million. You know how many that is. That's bigger than the population of 22 states. That's like the entire city of Los Angeles getting up one morning, packing their stuff into a truck and driving to Texas. And you know what? Some of them did drive to Texas. A lot of them drove to Texas. Where'd they go? I'll tell you where. Texas, Florida, Arizona, Nevada, Tennessee, the Carolinas. Red states, every single one. They went to states that do the opposite of what Gavin does. Lower taxes, lower cost of living, less regulation, more freedom, cheaper housing. You know, the stuff people actually want. He read from the sheet. 817,000 in 2022 alone. And these aren't just anybody leaving, these are college-educated adults. Doctors, engineers, teachers, software developers, entrepreneurs, the people who build economies, the people who create jobs. The smart people are leaving, Gavin, and they're going to states that your party says are backward. What does that tell you? And the businesses. Trump's voice rose. Tesla, gone. Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, said, I can't do business in California anymore, and moved his entire headquarters to Texas. His headquarters? Oracle, gone to Texas. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, gone to Texas. Charles Schwab, gone to Texas. Palantir, gone to Denver. These aren't food trucks, Gavin. These aren't lemonade stands. These are the companies that built Silicon Valley. They created the California economy, the fifth largest economy in the world that you love to talk about. These companies built it, and they left because of you. Trump set down the sheet. Let me tell you about the cost of living because these numbers are incredible in a bad way. Cost of living in California, $26,000 more per year for a middle-class family than the national average. That means if you make $100,000 in California, you have the same buying power as someone making $73,000 in a normal state. You lose 27% of your income just by living there. Gas prices consistently the highest or second highest in the country. And what did Gavin do? He created a gas price gouging penalty. Sounds good, right? That his own economists warned would raise prices. And it did. Prices went up. Because that's what happens when you add cost to a business, Gavin. The business passes them to the customer. Well, this is not complicated. This is day one business. This is lemonade stand economics. Housing, the median home in California costs $874,000, almost $900,000. In Ohio, where Vance is from, great guy. In Ohio, you can buy a beautiful house for $200,000. In Texas, $300,000. In California, $900,000. And Gavin wonders why people are leaving. They're not leaving because the weather is bad, Gavin. California has great weather. They're leaving because they can't afford the weather. Electricity, 32 cents per kilowatt hour, double the national average. And going up, 11% increase just last year. You're paying double for electricity in a state that's always sunny. How do you pay double for electricity when you have more sun than anybody? That takes special talent, a very expensive kind of talent. He turned to the reporters. 4 million people? Think about that number. 4 million individual decisions. 4 million times a person sat at their kitchen table, looked at their rent, looked at their paycheck, looked at the gas bill and the grocery bill and the electricity bill and the price of a house they could never afford and said, I'm done. Nobody forced them, nobody deported them, they chose to leave. They voted with their feet. Actually, they voted with U-Hauls, and every single U-Haul drove to a red state. He looked at Newsom. So, Gavin, how's California doing? The people who are left, I mean. Newsom tried to interject about California's GDP and innovation economy. His voice was measured, professional, controlled. The voice of a man trained to stay calm under fire. Trump let him talk for about 15 seconds, long enough for politeness, short enough to prevent a complete thought from forming. You're doing the thing again, the smooth-talking thing, very good, very polished, like a car salesman, actually a good car salesman, I'll give you that. But here's the problem with car salesmen, Gavin. Eventually, the customer has to drive the car, and 4 million customers drove it right out of your state. Trump shifted, his voice dropped half a register, the showmanship dimmed. What was left was something closer to genuine irritation, which in Trump was more dangerous than performance, because it meant the jokes were over. Let's talk about the homeless, because this one really bothers me. Gavin, when you were mayor of San Francisco, you said you would end homelessness. You said that 2004, 21 years ago. You made a promise. Promises matter, at least they do where I come from. He pulled out a number. $24 billion. That's how much California spent on homelessness programs under Gavin. $24 billion with a B. Do you know what you can build for $24 billion? I built Trump Tower for $250 million. For $24 billion, I could build 96 Trump Towers. I could house every homeless person in California in a luxury apartment with a doorman and room service and still have money left over. But Gavin has a different approach. His approach is called housing first. Sounds good, right? Give them a house first, solve the problem. Except 75% of the chronically homeless have drug addiction or severe mental illness. And Gavin's rules say you can't require sobriety or mental health treatment as a condition of housing. You give them the house and say, do whatever you want, we won't ask questions. That's not housing. That's a really expensive room with no rules. What did Gavin get for $24 billion more homeless people? 31% more, not less, more. The entire rest of the country, homelessness went down 10%. Every other state figured it out. California went up by almost a third. He spent $24 billion and made the problem worse. That's actually impressive in a way, a horrible way, but impressive. You have to try to fail that badly. He leaned forward. An NBC investigation, very professional. They walked the streets themselves, surveyed 153 blocks of downtown San Francisco. Trash on all of them, every single block. Needles on 41, human feces on 96 blocks. A preschool teacher said, and this is a quote, "We see poop, we see pee, we see needles, and we see trash." That's the walking route for children going to school in Nancy Pelosi's district and Gavin's state. He leaned back. But here's my favorite part, my absolute favorite. In 2023, President Xi Jinping, China, very tough guy, we get along actually. President Xi comes to San Francisco for a big summit, APEC. And you know what happened. Trump paused for effect. He was good at this. He had been doing this for 40 years. The streets got clean overnight. The tent cities, gone. The needles, gone. The human waste on 96 blocks, gone. The drug addicts relocated, moved, cleared, whatever they did with them, gone. San Francisco looked beautiful like a postcard, like the San Francisco you see in old movies, sparkling for the president of China. And then she left. He let the pause stretch, 3 seconds, 4. The room held its breath, because that's what rooms do when Trump goes quiet. And it all came back. Every tent, every needle, every pile of you-know-what on those 96 blocks, all of it, in a week. It was like a magic trick, except the trick was on the people who live there and pay taxes there and send their children to school there. Gavin proved something that night. He proved he can fix homelessness in San Francisco whenever he wants to. He has the resources, he has the manpower, he has the ability. He just doesn't want to do it for Americans. He did it for a communist dictator. He looked at Newsom. You cleaned the streets for Xi Jinping and left them dirty for the people who elected you, Gavin. Even I wouldn't do that. And I've been accused of a lot of things. Newsom's smile was gone, not replaced by anger or defiance, replaced by nothing. A blank expression, the expression of a man who is calculating whether to fight or endure and hasn't finished the math yet. Trump was not finished. He was never finished until he decided to be finished. $33 billion. He said the word billion the way other people say unbelievable, stretching it, letting it fill the room. $33 billion in unemployment fraud under Gavin. His Employment Development Department, the EDD, sounds like a disease, and frankly, it is a disease. His EDD sent out $33 billion in fraudulent payments during COVID. He counted on his fingers. Prisoners got checks, inmates, people behind bars. The state knows where they are, they're in prison, and the EDD still sent them unemployment checks. Dead people got checks. People who had been dead for years got checks. People in other states, New York, Florida, God knows where, who never lived in California, never worked in California, never set foot in California, they filed claims and got paid. International crime rings filed thousands of claims using stolen identities, and nobody caught it for months. $33 billion went out the door, and Gavin's people didn't notice. He added a detail that landed with the specificity of a punch. And just to really complete the picture, a state audit found that the EDD paid monthly service fees for over 6,000 cell phones that nobody was using. 6,000 phones sitting in drawers for years. Some of them hadn't been turned on in 4 years, and the state was paying the bill every month for phones that were sitting in a drawer. That's not government, that's comedy. He pulled out another sheet. 7 state agencies, 7 are now classified as high risk by the state auditor. That means waste, fraud, abuse, or severe mismanagement. 7 agencies, $76 billion in high-risk operations under Gavin. And then, just to make it perfect, his chief of staff, Dana Williamson, gets indicted, 23 counts, 23, bank fraud, wire fraud. She claimed $1.7 million in fake business expenses on her taxes, a $15,000 Chanel bag, a private jet, $170,000 birthday trip to Mexico, and she did all this from 2022 to 2024 while working for Gavin in his office next to his desk. 5 co-conspirators indicted, 27,000 pages of evidence, 750 gigabytes. That's a lot of fraud, Gavin. Trump looked at Newsom. You didn't know your chief of staff is buying $15,000 Chanel bags and chartering private jets with taxpayer money, and you didn't know, Gavin. She sat outside your door, she ran your schedule, she managed your staff. How do you not notice? I notice when someone changes the flowers in the lobby, I notice everything. That's why I'm here, and you're in that chair. And the train, oh, the train. Trump actually laughed. A real laugh, not a performance laugh. This is my favorite, the train to nowhere. High-speed rail, Los Angeles to San Francisco. Voters approved it in 2008 for $33 billion. You know what it costs now, $128 billion, 4 times. And how many people have ridden it? 0. Not one. Not a single human being has sat on that train. Over a decade of construction, $128 billion, 0 passengers. He held up a finger. I built buildings in 18 months. I built golf courses in less than a year. This guy can't build a train in 15 years, and he wants to run the country. The country is harder than a train, Gavin, much harder. Oh, and the houses. He promised 3.5 million new homes by 2025. You know how many got built? About 640,000. He missed by 82%, and when they asked him about it, he said, "This is real." He said it was a stretch goal. A stretch goal. In business, if you miss your target by 82%, you get fired. In California, you get to run for president. Trump picked up speed. Now the humor thinned. The numbers came faster. This was the part of Trump that people who dismissed him as a clown never understood. That beneath the showmanship was a man who could read a balance sheet and who used entertainment as the delivery system for information that would otherwise be too dry to penetrate. Schools, 2/3 of California kids can't do math at grade level. 2 out of 3, more than half can't read and write at grade level. These are your state's own test scores, Gavin, from your Department of Education. And your kids, private school, in person during COVID, $12,000 a year tuition, great school, the best for your kids. Everybody else's kids got a laptop and a Zoom account and 2 years of falling behind. He leaned forward. You know what 2 years of lost education does to a child, I'll tell you. It follows them forever. The kids who missed school during your lockdown while your kids were in class, those kids will learn less over their lifetimes. They'll have fewer opportunities. They'll struggle with things that the kids in your private school won't struggle with. And you did that, not COVID you, because you kept schools closed longer than almost any other state. Other states opened, you stayed closed. And your kids were in private school the whole time. Crime up across the board after his Proposition 47 and Proposition 57. You can steal $949 from a store and it's a misdemeanor. Under $1,000, go ahead, help yourself. People walk into stores with garbage bags on camera, very professional, very organized, take everything off the shelves, walk out, and nothing happens. Nothing. Stores are closing because of it. Walgreens closed locations, Target reduced hours, small businesses forget about it. They can't survive when the law says you can steal from them and nobody goes to jail. And the voters passed Proposition 36 last November to reverse what Gavin did overwhelmingly. The people of California said, this isn't working, we want our laws back, and Gavin opposed it. His own voters told him he was wrong, and he told them they were wrong. That takes a special kind of, I'll be polite, that takes a special kind of confidence. Wildfires. His office said they treated hundreds of thousands of acres for fire prevention. NPR investigated. NPR, not Fox, not me, not the RNC, NPR. The most liberal news organization in America, the kind of people who put Gavin's picture on their refrigerator. They found he exaggerated by 690%, 7 times the real number. He lied about fire prevention while people's houses were burning, while families were evacuating with their kids and their dogs and whatever they could carry. Gavin was in Sacramento putting out press releases about how many acres he'd treated. 700% exaggeration. In business, that's called fraud. In politics, it's called Tuesday. He set everything down, all the papers, all the photos, all the numbers. He placed both hands on the desk again and looked at Newsom the way a man looks at a business proposal he has decided to reject. Gavin wants to be president. Everybody knows it. He's running. The hair is running. The smile is running. The whole package is running. So let me tell the American people what they'd be getting. He did not look at his notes. He knew the list. A man who was built by a billionaire's money and a political boss's appointments. A man who had an affair with his campaign manager's wife. A man who told 40 million people to stay home and then went to a $350 dinner. A man whose kids went to private school while your kids were on Zoom. A man who spent $24 billion on homeless and made it worse. A man who lost 4 million residents. A man whose EDD sent out $33 billion in fraud. A man whose chief of staff got indicted for 23 counts of fraud, including a Chanel bag. A man who's building a $128 billion train that nobody's ever ridden. A man who promised 3.5 million homes and built 600,000. A man whose students can't do math. A man who lied about fire prevention by 700% while houses burned. A man who cleaned the streets for China and left them dirty for Americans. He looked at Newsom. That's the California model. That's the resume. Beautiful hair, beautiful smile, beautiful suit, and the worst record of any governor in America. He leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. Gavin, you're a nice-looking man. I mean that. Great hair, very shiny, good suit. You look like a president. But looking like a president and being a president are two different things. I look like a billionaire, and I am a billionaire. You look like a governor who has it all figured out, but 4 million people looked at your state and said, I'm out. And they're not wrong. He turned to the cameras one final time. 4 million people already voted with moving trucks. I think that tells you everything. He picked up a pen and began signing a document that had been waiting on his desk, an executive order on trade policy, completely unrelated. He was done with Newsom. He had moved on. Newsom was still sitting in the visitor's chair. The room hung in the space between the end of Trump's monologue and whatever was supposed to come next. Newsom sat with both hands on the armrests of his chair. His posture was upright. His face was composed. He looked exactly the way he always looked, polished, put together, camera-ready. But the gap between how he looked and what had just happened was visible to everyone in the room. He looked like a man in a suit standing in a building that had just been condemned, presentable, but in the wrong place. A reporter asked, "Governor, would you like to respond?" Newsom straightened his tie. He smiled the smile, the same one from the start. I appreciate the president's colorful commentary. The fact remains that California is the fifth largest economy in the world, and we continue to lead in innovation, climate, and there it is, Trump said without looking up from his signing. Fifth largest economy. I told you he can't help it. It's like a tick. Several reporters laughed. Newsom's sentence died in the laughter. He did not start a new one. A second reporter tried, "Governor, do you have a specific response to the unemployment fraud numbers?" Newsom, "Every state dealt with pandemic-era fraud, and California has been working aggressively to $33 billion, Trump said, still signing. "Just say the number, Gavin. Say it out loud. $33 billion, it's therapeutic." Newsom did not say the number. He pivoted to a statement about federal cooperation and pandemic recovery. He was articulate, he was smooth, he hit every talking point his team had prepared, and none of it mattered because the room had already decided, not through argument but through physics, that the man behind the desk was in control and the man in the visitor's chair was not. The press conference ended when Trump decided it ended by standing up, shaking Newsom's hand 2 seconds firm, the same pull, and saying, "Thank you, Gavin. Say hello to California for me, the parts that are left." Newsom walked out of the Oval Office with his team forming a loose perimeter around him. He was still smiling. He shook hands with a Secret Service agent by the door. He said something to his communications director that nobody else heard. He looked exactly like a man who had just had a productive meeting, which is what Gavin Newsom always looks like after everything, and which is why on this day the smile itself was the most damaging image of all. Because the gap between the smile and the reality was so wide that the smile became evidence. Evidence that this was a man who had spent his career looking like everything was peen, and that the skill had finally failed him in a room where the numbers were on the desk and the cameras were on. The clip that moved first was 13 seconds long. Trump saying 4 million people already voted with moving trucks. It traveled through text messages before it hit social media. By the time the official White House video was uploaded, the 13-second version had already been shared 9 million times. It didn't need context. 13 seconds, one sentence, a presidency summarized by an exodus. The second clip was the Xi Jinping section. He cleaned the streets for a communist dictator and left them dirty for the people who elected him. 27 million views in 48 hours, shared not just by conservatives but by San Francisco residents who had watched the APEC cleanup and the return of the encampments with their own eyes. They shared it not because they liked Trump, they shared it because someone had finally said what they had seen. The third clip was Trump signing the executive order while Newsom tried to respond. The image, the president working, not listening while the governor talked to the air, became a meme template within hours. Someone captioned it, "When your Uber driver keeps talking about their screenplay," someone else, "fifth largest economy in the world." Both versions went viral. CNN's panel tried to analyze the event as a policy discussion. It wasn't, it was a demolition. One analyst said, "The president was characteristically undisciplined but unusually factual." Another said, "Governor Newsom was unable to gain any traction because the format, if you can call it a format, gave him no space to build an argument." A third analyst, a former Obama strategist, said the most honest thing, "The problem wasn't the format, the problem was the numbers. You can't spin your own state's audit report." MSNBC called it a presidential ambush designed to humiliate a political opponent in the Oval Office. They brought in a California economist who confirmed on air that the 4 million figure was from the Census Bureau, the 33 billion was from the state auditor, and the high-speed rail estimate was from the California High-Speed Rail Authority's own budget projections. The economist said, "The numbers are accurate, the characterization is a different matter." It was the kind of defense that concedes everything. In Fresno, Rosa Martinez heard her name on the radio. She was driving to her new job, cashier at a grocery store, $12 an hour, above minimum wage, no benefits. When Trump said, "Rosa Martinez, 22 years Fresno," she pulled onto the shoulder of Highway 99 and stopped. She sat in her car with the engine running and the radio on. She had not heard a president say her name before. She had not heard anyone in Washington say her name before. She sat there for 4 minutes, which she knew because she watched the dashboard clock change and then she put the car in drive and went to work. She did not tell anyone about it that day, but that night she told her daughter, and her daughter posted a clip on TikTok with the caption, "My mom's restaurant, 22 years, he said her name." The clip got 2.3 million views. Rosa did not watch it. On Interstate 10 heading east out of California, a couple in a U-Haul heard the press conference on satellite radio. The truck was packed with everything they owned. They were moving to Scottsdale. When Trump said 4 million people already voted with moving trucks, the woman in the passenger seat put her hand on her husband's arm. He was driving. He did not look at her. He looked at the road ahead, the road out of California, the road that 4 million people before them had taken for 4 million different reasons that all added up to the same thing. In Oakland, Diane Chen, a third-grade teacher who had been teaching for 11 years, watched the clips on her phone during her lunch break. She had already taped 2 statistics to the teacher's lounge bulletin board from previous events. When Trump said, 2/3 of kids can't do math, and his kids are in private school, she did not tape anything new to the board. She didn't need to, the board was already full. She ate her sandwich, she went back to class, she taught math to 26 8-year-olds, 12 of whom were at grade level, the other 14 were not. She taught them anyway, she would teach them tomorrow, she would teach them the day after that. This is what teachers do in states where governors go to French Laundry and children go to Zoom. That evening, Newsom's Instagram account posted a photograph of him in the Oval Office, shaking Trump's hand, looking presidential. The caption, "Had a productive conversation with President Trump about California's future." California is the 5th largest economy in the world. The top comment, with 87,000 likes, was 5 words. "How's California doing, Gavin?" The second comment, 5th largest economy, 1st in homelessness. The third, 4 million people moving trucks. The fourth, Rosa Martinez, 22 years. At 1:17 a.m., Trump posted on Truth Social, "Gavin Newsom came to the Oval Office today and it did not go well for him or for California. I showed him the numbers and he had no answers, none. Beautiful hair though, very shiny. Maybe he should do shampoo commercials instead of running for president, would be a big improvement for California." It got 4 million likes by morning. And after that day, after the Oval Office, after the numbers and the photos and the French Laundry and the train to nowhere and Rosa Martinez's name on national radio, every time Gavin Newsom stood at a podium and said the words California model, every time he straightened his tie and smoothed his hair and delivered the line about the 5th largest economy in the world, somewhere in a comment section, in a text thread, in the quiet thought of a person who had loaded a U-Haul and driven east on the 10, someone would say, "How's California doing, Gavin? Tell everybody."